All right. Recording in progress. That's new. Today we are looking at two chapters: avoiding and breaking plateaus, and weight management myths. So we're going to kill some inconsistencies that are out there. Bad data, or just maybe ideas that people have come up with. Where they're like, surely this is the best way to do things. And, we're going to kind of talk about like why those might not be best practices and stuff. But for now, we're talking about how to avoid and break plateaus. So this is going to be chapter 8 of the weight loss manual. And after this section, we want to be able to kind of understand, how to set appropriate goals. Obviously, when it comes to like breaking a plateau, plateaus are going to happen. Like this is just, there's something that will occur. Birds fly, fish swim, the grass is green. Hey, you're going to hit a plateau at some point, uh and that's why it's important for us to set like appropriate goals and kind of understand that like we need to adjust things over time. Then we're going to talk about ways that we can assist our clients reach their weight loss or maybe weight gain goals, depending on what it is. The rationale behind like how plateaus happen, why they happen, and sort of how to beat them. So hitting a plateau, super, super, super common, especially when it comes to like a weight loss routine. You will have someone, you hear about it all the time where people are like, I went on this diet, it was really successful in the beginning, and then I fell off the wagon and I'm back to where I am, or where I was before. And it's like, okay, like, yeah, that can actually be explained pretty easily. Like when you think about like, if we're just trying to create a caloric deficit of, let's say 300 calories a day, if you lose a substantial amount of weight, you could end up burning, a lot less calories. We think it's about 8 calories per pound. So if you lost 20 pounds, that's 160 calories a day. So you've been creating a 300 calorie deficit, which is helping you lose about like maybe 3/4 of a pound per week. Now you are down to about 1/4 of a pound. Or maybe 1/3 of a pound per week. So it's going to slow down a little bit. So it's going to feel like you're plateauing really hard. And that's just one of many of the reasons that we're going to kind of talk about today. So sometimes your clients will like hit these plateaus and they don't really realize like where it's coming from. Other times it could be because they don't simply have a good understanding of like how much activity they're engaging in, or they don't have the best understanding of how much energy they're bringing in. Sometimes like the longer you're on a diet, you get a little complacent and then you're like, oh, well, this one little thing isn't going to hurt. This is, I've been really good lately. So like, this isn't going to throw me off too much, these little tiny adjustments. And it's like, oh, suddenly like they've all kind of added up, imagine if just like you're falling off, you have like a extra, tablespoon of peanut butter every day. It's going to be about 80 calories. If that's a daily occurrence, it's like, well, like one day where you're a little bit extra hungry, maybe hormones or stress or something is causing you just like have a little bit of extra hunger. Listen to your body, partake in that, address that hunger. But like, if you're doing it like consistently, it's like, okay, we should change something up in your diet to make it easier for you to stick to the program. And then also there are some of these non-medical but like physiologic reasons for plateaus, and we'll kind of look at some of the strategies to kind of help with those. So if we're talking about plateauing, if we're kind of discussing this, right, how that's going to occur is, again, we kind of go back to that first law of thermodynamics, right? Like a lot of people, when they hit a plateau, they think that like, oh, it's like their body is, my metabolism has completely shut down, or, something has happened. Like I've drastically changed here and there. And it's like, yeah, maybe. I mean, like, for the record, like, absolutely. Like there was an article that came out a couple years ago that was criticizing the Biggest Loser TV show. And it was all about how basically these different guests who were on there who lost extreme amounts of weight, they claimed that the Biggest Loser, that their experience on that show ruined their metabolism and they gained weight back. And it's not, I mean, sure, their metabolism may have slowed down. Absolutely. That does happen. Although the amount that happens, I think oftentimes people give way too much credit for. I think the real problem with like why people tend to lose to gain a lot of weight back is because they will often do the things that result in weight loss, but they will not change their habits, which are, you know, eventually you're going to go end up right back where you were, right? You guys know how like my favorite phrase in the entire world, right? Form follows function. I love saying that. Like, you know, if your body or if your lifestyle is shaped a certain way, your body will reflect that, you know. What the way I've said this some other times is like your life is perfectly designed right now to give you the results that you have been getting. Otherwise, you wouldn't be this way. You'd be some other way, right? And everybody's equation is a little bit different, you know. I've got like kind of a rabbit's metabolism when it comes to like having plenty of energy, and that actually makes it really hard for me to gain muscle, because a lot of times, like when I do go on a calorie surplus, I just become an even more like kind of active, hyper person. You know, I talk with my hands a little bit more. You know, I tend to just talk a little bit more. I get real, I pace a little bit more. I become more bouncy. I don't know if you, I mean, you guys probably don't see it, but like, you know, my legs pretty much going a mile a minute, nonstop during these calls. You know, just kind of sitting here, unless yeah, except for on days where I'm like pretty relaxed. In the evening calls, sometimes like I always hit my evening lulls because I'm up early, like right around like when the morning call starts. So sometimes I'm a little more laid back at night. But that's, you know, that's sort of like a little bit of genetics, you know. So like you are given your genetics and they're going to result in like the habits, and then like you grew up with your parents who are going to reflect and shape like your worldview. You know, I grew up thinking milk was incredibly healthy. I grew up thinking that you know, as long as I had like 1 or 2 florets of broccoli a day, you know, I was getting plenty of vegetables in my diet. I grew up around all of that. So without like changing those ideas, without changing my lifestyle and things like that, it would, you know, it explains like why I would get, you know, the results that I am getting, right? And the same thing I think is true of our clients. You know, we go back to this law of thermodynamics. People are like, no, my metabolism shot. And it's like, no, chances are like, you know, you just, something else is happening. You lowered your calories. Now your body's moving a little bit less, you know. Your body is finding a way to balance you out because that is what it is designed to do. Your body is, its number one job is to maintain homeostasis. So if like you can just if your subconscious brain can very sneakily slow you down just a little bit, maybe you don't even walk as fast and so you just burn a little bit less energy, it'll help with that energy balance. And that's what our body does. So we're constantly trying to maintain this energy balance. Your body loves plateauing, even though it is kind of our biggest enemy. So the two most common sort of contributors to a weight loss plateau are physiologic adaptations to exercise activity programs. So this is the one where, yeah, like you are going to get better at exercise. And then non-compliance to the program. Non-compliance is, you know, you're sticking to the diet. It's like, are you, you know, little tiny differences. So looking at physiologic adaptations, right? Your body will expend a lot of energy in the beginning of a new routine. Your body is not used to the metabolic demand of whatever activity it is you're doing, and your body will have to work a little bit harder. Let's just use an example of, let's just say we're using like a stability ball chest press as an example, right? There's a chest stabilization exercise. Let's say we use the stability ball chest press as an example. The first time you ever do that, you get on the ball and you're like, okay. And then you kind of get yourself set up and then you maybe like start your set, right? Like all that like little extra wiggling and stuff burns a little bit of extra energy, right? You're just trying to stabilize that up, you know, just trying to get to where you're supposed to be. Then the next workout, you're a little better at it. So you kind of go right into where you're supposed to be. The next workout, you're really good at it, right? So maybe you raise the weight up a little bit, or maybe you make it even more unstable some way, but your body gets better at exercise. And so it burns less energy, you know? And I was just thinking about, I was honestly, it's funny that this is the lesson for today, but I was kind of thinking about this morning because I was doing Bulgarian split squats this morning, and I haven't done those in a while. Like I've been on I've been kind of away from that exercise. And so I just like returned to it, and I was like, God dang it. Like I kept like tipping over on my right side, not my left. And I was like, huh, focus. And I was just like, you were good at this. And I was just like really riding the struggle bus. I will say it was the first time I ever tried to do them in my lifting shoes, which are way stiffer. So that like made it a lot harder. But I loved it. I was like my planted foot, I feel really great about. So I was burning a little bit of extra energy. If that it's the same number of repetitions that I'll do next week, but like, if I'm a little bit better at it next week, I might not burn as many calories, So physiologic adaptation is a big one. It shows the importance of like why we should track a lot of different measurements when we're doing our fitness assessments, because yeah, maybe your client does plateau in this way. But we actually pay attention to maybe some of our other things that we can look at, right? So we look at like, tracking their inches, tracking their circumference measurements, tracking body fat percentage, because maybe they'll plateau in like one area, but not the others, right? If I've got a client and their weight plateaus for a little bit, and even their body fat percentage, if it like kind of remains the same, doesn't make like a big substantial change in maybe a week's time, but I've watched all of their weights go up, I'm like, this is still progress. This is why it's so important to always use a workout journal, because it's a great way to track your client's progress. Oh, that's right. I forgot they were doing a double up here. So then also, like I said, there is non-compliance to the program, right? Whether that's through nutrition or through exercise, not burning as many calories as prescribed. We'll come back to that again in just a second. But looking at physiologic adaptations, one of the strategies for overcoming the lack of progress, even though it's not, it's almost never a lack of progress. Even if your client is even if your client's just showing up to the gym, they're not giving you their all, they're going to experience some type of adaptation. So it's very important for us to track a lot of different types of measurements, right? Weight, body fat percentage, circumference measurements, look for your strength gains, So when we're looking at body composition changes, this sometimes explains plateaus. As an individual's weight reduces, guess what? Their caloric expenditure also reduces. Again, it's about 8 calories per pound. That's on average. Could be less, could be more. If it's pure fat that they're losing, maybe it's a little bit less. But if that weight was some muscle mass, that's probably going to be a little bit higher. So if you do not make like a caloric reduction at about the same rate, then that weight, that will result in a plateau, or it could possibly even result in like a weight gain, and then looking at this non-compliance idea, right? So non-compliance, there's a couple different versions of this. A lot of times, like people will underreport the amount of calories that they are bringing in. So underreporting calories results in a reduction of the deficit necessary to lose their weight. So what ends up happening is, because they are, maybe eating at like a restaurant, frequently. And yeah, maybe you're at that, you're like, no, I stuck to my diet perfectly this week, still didn't lose weight. What the hell? And it's like, you've been going to, I went to Panera Bread every day. I got the whole wheat. I don't know any of the sandwiches at Panera. Why did I do this to myself? I went to Subway every day. I got whole wheat, Black Forest ham or whatever. And I got all, the veggies the way I'm supposed to. I did all these, it did everything I was supposed to do. And it says on the freaking thing that this was 540 calories. And it's like, all right, so it's supposed to be 540 calories. But is it though? What if Bob behind the counter squeezed a little bit too hard on that mayonnaise and like you get an extra tablespoon on there. What if, there just wasn't as much protein in there as you thought there was? What if, the bread just weighs a little bit more than normal, Restaurants are pretty close. I mean, they do a good job of like reporting their calories and stuff because they have to. But it's not perfect. Human error is just way too easy. This is one of the reasons why I like using like a food scale can be a really big game changer when it comes to like a routine. I was thinking about that. I mean, I do this myself. Like I buy like a thing of milk. The milk that I buy is like perfectly set. It's exactly the number of servings. It's exactly the number of cups, which is the number of servings that I need to last me 1 week. And so I'm always like I measure. I get really kind of anal about it when I'm measuring out like my morning coffee. And my roommates are like, "Are you doing that because of calories?" I'm like, "No, I'm not doing it because of calories. I'm doing it because like it makes it last." And what inevitably happens every time is if I just eyeball it, I get to like Sunday and I go to make like a cup of coffee and I got like, just like, it's like, I like a lot of milk in my coffee. I like watered down, very weak coffee. I love coffee, but I love wimpy coffee. And so like if I get to the end of the week and it's like there's nothing in there, I'm always just like, God dang it. I get really flustered. And it looks the same every time. Like when I fill it, it takes it to like that. So, and there's, I only have to take it to like right there at the top of the mug. And so you would think it'd be very easy for me to eyeball and leave that much space every time. But whenever I eyeball it, end of the week, I get screwed. It's just human error. It's just very, very, very easy to make small little adjustments without realizing it. So lots of meals away from home, that's going to totally screw up your ability to report accurately. Large portion sizes, the larger your portion sizes are, chances are the more likely you are to also underreport or misunderstand like how many calories you're bringing in. Or just maybe you forget to put something in. I've definitely done that a couple times where I'm like, did I have my snack? I was like, I thought I did. I go downstairs, I'm like, nope, there's still this many apples. So that crap. All right. It's like, oh, end of the day. That's always me whenever I'm on like a weight gain routine, whenever I'm trying to like put on a little bit of muscle. I'm always like, I always forget like all the extra snacks that I throw into my diet and stuff. And I'm like, did I get through that? No. And it's like 9 p.m. and I'm like, I gotta get through this. Over reporting caloric expenditure, this is another big one. This is a big one. This is often based on your client's perception of how difficult an exercise is. I'm sure everybody in here has been doing some type of like abdominal work before, and you're probably at the end of that set and you're just like, good God, and you're dying, and you're just like, God, that was so hard. Well, as hard as it was, your abs are tiny. They're just not, they're little bacon strips compared to the rest of your body, so the amount of calories that you burn from that, just not very high. It just isn't. Yoga is super hard. I find it incredibly difficult. The caloric expenditure from yoga is not as high as we sometimes give it credit for. So our client's perception of how hard something is can be fairly misguided, but there are ways for us to minimize error. One of the best ways to do this is tracking your caloric expenditure through things like heart rate monitors or accelerometers or pedometers. Mine's on a charger right now, but like wearing that, you guys can see my freaking tan line here. Wearing that watch that has like your number of steps, or it tells you like, what your heart rate was and, things like that. It's a really good way to kind of minimize the errors that you are making. Like, let's say you're doing like interval training, like we talked about on Friday, right? Let's say you're doing an interval training routine, 3 minutes in recovery and like 1 minute hard. And so you've been doing that for, let's say, 4 weeks, right? However many rounds you are doing, but like 1 minute sprint, 3 minutes recovery. And you've been on the treadmill and you're sprinting every time, your sprint is, let's say, 9 miles per hour, and your recovery is, let's say, 6 miles per hour, right? Well, after you've been doing that for a while, you're going to get pretty good at it, right? So then you suddenly check your heart rate monitor and you're like, what was my average heart rate throughout this workout? And it's like, maybe week 1, your average was 130 beats per minute. Week 2 is like 128. Week 3, it was like 127. Week 4, maybe you just have huge adaptation. That week it's like 120. Like it's a big difference, right? Like, it shows that we're burning less calories. So using tools like that can really help our clients when it comes to tracking their progress. And that's another reason why we want to make sure that we're writing things down in workout journals and food journals and things like that. When it comes to making adjustments, though, oftentimes, like, making a big adjustment, which is what a lot of people do, they'll be like, oh no, I had a plateau, and then they freak out and they drop their calories like crazy. Rather than making like a huge adjustment like that or changing everything, you're much better off making like small, sustainable changes. Reduce your portion size by a little bit. Like, if you've got like a meal plan that's been working for you and all of a sudden you hit a plateau, make a tiny adjustment. If you were doing 2 tablespoons of dressing on your salad, do 1. If you were doing 100 grams of cereal, you take it down to like 75 grams or something. Tiny adjustments. Or maybe you add a little bit of extra activity in there. Take a short walk, find a way to become less sedentary, like over time. Move during like a commercial break of like your favorite TV show or something. Again, little tiny changes. Then maybe one of the other things that we can do, let's reassess your caloric needs. Let's run our numbers again when it comes to looking at like our clients' body composition changes, right? If your client loses way more lean body mass than they're supposed to, maybe going on like a zigzag calorie diet is effective, where they have a higher amount of calories and a higher protein intake on days where they are training, and then they have a lower calories, lower intake on days where they're not. Zigzagging your calories can be a kind of effective tool. Actually, on that BMR calculator that I always tend to use in class. Actually, hold on. That's not the one. Is that the one? Dang it. Calorie calculator? There it is. So on the if you go to the calorie calculator version here on calorie.net, and this is your person, and they're trying to like lose weight, right? Let's say they go on like a zigzag schedule. Well, they might eat at maintenance on one day, and then the next day they drop their calories down. And then drop it down a little bit, and then they go back to maintenance on, like, in this version, it's just maintenance on the weekends. And then, lower calories throughout. You could also just like zigzag every day. You can see like 2000, 22, 23, 25, 24, 23 again. This one's complicated. I don't know if I like that, but that can be a really effective way also, to look at your calories. So reassess, take a look and be like, hey, maybe our math was wrong. We tried the Harris-Benedict formula. Let's use the Mifflin-St. Jeor formula, or the Cunningham equation or something. There are a lot of different ways to calculate out our clients' calories. So adjusting and making, small changes are going to be much more effective, and they're, less likely to result in, your client having like compliance issues. Sometimes you can do a deload week. That can be a really good way to break a plateau. One thing about exercise, we love exercise, but it is stress. It is 100% stress on the body. So if your client is like very stressed because like they've been hitting it really, really, really hard, and their body has kind of become adapted to this idea of like daily vigorous activity. Using a deload can be not only a really great tool to make sure that you don't overtrain and like damage your muscles or pull something. It's also a really good way to make sure that like your body goes, okay, and then takes a moment to kind of slow down, de-stress, adapt, and then you come back stronger afterwards. This should really only happen if your client, hasn't like skipped their workouts in the last 10 to 12 weeks. And you don't have to necessarily like, it says take a week off from training here, but your deload week could be something gentle too. Like, sometimes like when I do like, if I do like a really severe deload, like whenever I'm at the end of like a powerlifting routine, because I'll do a little bit of like really heavy training a couple times a year. And when I do really heavy, when I'm at the end of a heavy training cycle, I can always really, 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 really feel it. And oftentimes I'll take a week off afterwards when I'll just go do like, I'll do like yoga every day or something kind of gentle. Go for hikes instead of for, my normal runs and stuff. So that's a good one. Implement a significant change. This can also be a really good way. This can be done by, guess what? Moving through different phases of training, right? So we go to NASM's, we look at that NASM periodization guide. Oh, that's not the one I want. So if we take a look, like I think Thomas, I think this is your first time seeing this one, but if we take a look right here, this is one of the ways, this is like a little tool that we have at our disposal, for setting up periodization. If I wanted my client in the stabilization level in January, strength endurance in February, hypertrophy in March, strength endurance in April, hypertrophy in May, right? This is a pretty good weight loss routine. This is a good way to make some pretty substantial body composition changes over the course of an entire year. You can see, we've revisited stabilization 3 times throughout the year to make sure that the body is, not overtaxed or anything like that. And maybe this is like 3 sets of 12 unstable reps. It's still relatively heavy. And then the next month we get into strength endurance. We go, a little bit higher on the repetition scheme, a little bit heavier, right? And then down here, we get like much, much heavier. And it's like, okay, now we're doing heavy. And it's like, maybe this is where we were losing a substantial amount of weight here and here because this burns a lot of calories. And then down here, it's like, okay, maybe the weight starts to plateau a little bit because we were focused a little bit more on like putting on muscle rather than losing as much body fat. And then we drop it back down again, and then things like that. And you don't necessarily always have to change this up. I mean, this is clearly changing about every 4 weeks. Doesn't have to be like that, right? You could stay in a phase of training for a very long time. There's definitely nothing wrong with doing things this way either. This is a pretty common split right here. So a lot of different ways that you can kind of set this up. I think I have like a bunch of different examples. Annual plan. Yeah, here's like here's an athlete program, for instance, right? So, and by the way, you can also see I added the cardio down here, but we start them in January in the stabilization phase. In February, we move to strength endurance. And then in March, we do a combination of all 3 phases. So we have a stabilization day, a strength endurance day, and a power day. And that's like maybe Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So that's kind of cool, right? That's a very unique take on it. And we just repeat that 1, 2, and then all 3, 1, 2, and then like all 3. And they're moving through like stage 1. They have a month of steady state cardio. They have medium intervals. And then like there's the high intensity intervals, right? And we kind of alternate those around a little bit. So that's kind of a fun, different approach to sort of the annual plan idea. So love that. Try a new form of cardio, do something new, change it up just a little bit, move through a different phase of training. Also, moving more, you know. Obviously that's going to be a big one, but like if you take up daily walking, you know, walk in the morning, walk in the middle of your day, and then walk at night. Get a little bit more energy expenditure there, you know. Increasing your water intake can sometimes happen. Again, this one actually doesn't have anything to do with caloric expenditure, which a lot of people are like, yeah, your body has to process that water. It's like, okay, come on now. But it has been shown time and time again to be effective for weight loss. So if it's not burning calories, why does it work? Well, it works because oftentimes hunger is mistaken for thirst. Your brain knows, you know, the subconscious part of your brain knows that there is a lot of water in food. There's even a little bit of water in like dry cereal, very little, but some. So if your body's trying to stay hydrated, it can get a lot of that water from different types of foods. And it'll be like, all right, well, if you're not going to drink something, then you should eat something. And so then all of a sudden you start getting like some hunger hormones, right? So if your client's consuming more calories and that's causing like a plateau, increase their water intake and make that a little bit easier. Reassess their long-term and short-term goals. This one is not something that's sort of addressing how to fix the plateau, but this is sort of like, if a plateau occurs, this is something that like you likely are going to need to do, but like you may need to refocus on your original goals. You may need to make a change in order to like either shake things up or to reflect what is actually, you know, where you're actually on the path towards now. Because again, if your client like does hit a really hard plateau, they were losing, you know, and we have like a schedule. They're like, all right, in the next, you know, 18 weeks, I want to lose, let's say 20 pounds, right? And then suddenly you're 9 weeks in and they've only lost like 5 pounds. It's like, we're probably going to need to make some type of adjustment to our goals here. But at the same time, also changing your, like reassessing your goals and reevaluating your goals and coming back to your goals is also a really good way to increase your client's commitment to those goals. That's one thing we're going to talk about next mod, actually. When it comes to setting up, like, it's almost like we call it a goal contract. I should call it a contingency contract, but like, you know, revisiting those things, it's like, there's just something about like writing your goal down. Even I've had people very symbolic, as very much just like a symbolic gesture. I have had people like just write their goals on like a piece of paper, and like that piece of paper could get balled up and go straight into a trash can, but their commitment is still really high. There's just something about the fact that like when we write something down, it's like it's out there, it's in the universe, therefore I have to make it true, you know. Like I'm sure you guys kind of know what I'm talking about. Whenever I write something down, I'm like, oh, see, now I have to do it. Or if I say I will do something to someone else, I'm like, oh, I really do have to do it. So that's a big one. Maybe it's increasing your social support. Maybe that's another way to kind of break a goal, right? Get your friends, get your family involved. If your client is like losing a little bit of motivation, they're not working as hard when they're in the gym. They're like, I'm in the gym, I'm there every day, but maybe they're just not pushing themselves very hard, you know? Increasing social support can be really, 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 really helpful. And then encourage self-monitoring. So again, we kind of go back to this idea of like non-compliance, right? Use those freaking food journals. If your client is like all of a sudden plateauing and they're like, I don't get it, I did everything you told me to do when it comes to the diet, and it's like, all right, well, let's take a look at your diet for the next week. Let's you know, don't adjust anything, but let's go ahead and just food journal for the next week. And so we food journal like crazy, and then all of a sudden we're kind of looking at the data, and it's like, you know what, like these little things here are probably like what's happening. Or it's like, you know, you've fallen off the wagon consistently every day right around like 3 p.m. So chances are we need something a little bit healthier before that, that's going to leave you feeling fuller longer. We need something with like a higher satiety level. That's a small adjustment that we can make. Or even like in your goals, or I'm sorry, in your strength training goals, you know, that's a really big one. You know, the routine that I'm doing right now, like there's 2 ways that I'm like progressing on it. I'm using linear periodization, where yes, I am progressing by making the weight go up every week. But I am also doing what's called double progression, which is where I'm giving myself like a 12 to 15 rep range. And when I can complete all 3 or all 4 sets at like 15, it's like, all right. And then I increase the weight. And then I'm like, oh God, that's back to 12, So that's another way to like, see that moving every week. Encouraging self-monitoring really does help with adherence. So just talking really quickly before we move into the myths section here, which is nice because this is gonna be attached to it. What about like a pharmacological approach to weight loss, right? If your client hits a plateau and then they decide to take some type of like supplement, right? So dietary supplements can aid in weight loss programs. Like, make no mistake about it. Yeah, there is some evidence to suggest that like, there are, or you can take weight loss. There's a new one that's been approved by the FDA recently. That's very popular, and it's basically just full of fiber. Like, it's this new pill that you're supposed to take before you eat your meals and stuff. And like, in all their studies, it's like, sure enough, like, people have lost weight. And it's because like it's like a pill that's full of basically just like cellulose. So it fills your gut, and then your gut, it draws a lot of water to it. And so you have this like gel in your gut. It makes your stomach feel like it's got a lot of stuff. So your body goes, oh, well, yeah, no, we're full. So it creates some leptin, you know. There's also like thermogenic fat burners out there. In a lot of studies, these have been shown to burn increased energy. If I type thermogenic fat burner here, there's a lot of them. The most famous of which is probably, actually, I don't see it on here. There it is. The most famous of which is probably freaking hydroxycut. That's huge. But there's a lot of them. There's a ton. What was that, a stack? Yeah, there's a lot of different fat burners out there, and for the most part, like, what's in them, they'll have like black pepper extract and cayenne pepper extract and things like that, which, yeah, your body's gonna have like a hard time breaking down, so then it burns a little bit of energy doing that. And then it has just massive amounts of like caffeine. Caffeine makes you very hyper. And so if we're trying to make sure that your energy stays high throughout the day and you keep moving and burning calories, if you're doing this all day, you're burning a couple extra calories. And so hydroxycut can help with that. But obviously that's massive amounts of caffeine. So like, there are ways to be very cautious about it. It's like, hey, this could have, negative impacts. Prescription drugs or even non-prescription supplements can elicit side effects when used for extended periods of time. Even just like if you're taking hydroxycut and it's keeping you from being able to sleep, guess what? That's gonna mean that your body's making more cortisol, which is gonna be that's a fat building hormone. Not great, right? That's definitely something we're trying to avoid. So they should always speak to their physician when it comes to looking for the best ways to get the best results, but also, like, more importantly, minimizing any side effects that they may be dealing with. So summarizing everything up for this chapter, we are trying to, when it comes to aiding our clients through body composition plateaus, it's a big deal, right? We're trying to make small adjustments over time of about 100 calories per week. By the way, if I run someone's numbers, like, let's say I put Bay on like a weight loss routine, right? And I'm just gonna keep this really simple. These numbers are probably not accurate, but that's okay. If I were to look at something like this and I was like, okay, you need to eat about 2,400 calories every day. And then if we're trying to lose weight, then we'll take that down to eating 2,000 calories per day. That'll create a 404 calorie deficit. So 2,000 calories a day, it's a 404 calorie deficit. That's 0.8 pounds per week, right? And then I'm tracking her weight, and it's like, it's been 4 weeks, you know, and so that should have been 3.2 pounds. We take a look at the scale and it's like, it's closer to like 2, right? And it's like, okay, that's a substantial difference. I'm not going to just be like, we got to drop the calories like crazy. Instead, I'm going to say, all right, maybe we can make another 100 calorie adjustment. So we reduce it by 100. Or maybe it's like, maybe she's losing weight too rapidly, increase it by 100. You know, it's just a formula. I mean, you know, math is great, but it's not perfect. It makes a lot of assumptions, you know. These formulas were created by just like trial and error, looking at people, being like, well, your body weighs this much, and then it has this much body fat on it, and all these different things. You know, we think that you burn this many calories, and they came out with these formulas. I mean, look at the Harris Benedict formula. Look at this darn thing. It's 57.5, 20.9, 28.3. What if it's supposed to be 28.2? You know, like, what if it's just a little off? You know, it makes a difference. It does change things. So make small adjustments, avoiding plateaus by finding a way to, you know, keep that caloric balance from occurring, you know, because that is what your body is doing. Your body is like, nope, homeostasis. And so it's finding a way to balance things out. Any questions on that chapter? I actually do want to show you one more I have a video I want to show you. But any questions on that one? Bay's got the thumbs up. Thomas's, Lorianne?
I'm pretty good.
All righty. Interesting. Lorianne, why is anybody else see that? Your thumbs up is so dark. It's like opaque. Or not opaque. It's the opposite of opaque. It's clear. Transparent. Good Lord. Language is hard. All right. That will just drive me crazy. Let's take a look here. Jeremy Ethier Plateau. He's got a great video. I love Jeremy Ethier. He does such a good job of like, he does such a really good job of like kind of breaking things down. You know, he reports on like a scientific study, but then he breaks it down in such a way that's like, the reason I love showing his videos in particular is because like, this is how we want to talk to our clients. You know, it's not necessarily about like just getting a scientific breakdown. I mean, like, you know, that is helpful. But I just love like his breakdown because it's like, sometimes it's about translating the physiology into lessons. And I think he does a good job of that. I can't remember if it's this one or this one. I think it's this one. I'll have to skip forward and see the chart. Yeah. Yep. Okay, here we go. Because he's talking about yo-yo dieting in here, and that's a big part of this conversation. Share the sound. Here we go.
If you're watching this video, then chances are you've attempted a diet of your own in the past, and you likely saw some success with it. Maybe you lost a few pounds, or maybe you lost a ton of weight. But eventually, you reached a point where you just got stuck, despite working out and dieting as hard as ever. Then you got frustrated and ended up regaining even more weight than you initially lost. Then you likely attempted to diet again afterwards to get rid of that regained weight, but this time, even when you put in the same effort, you just can't seem to get as lean and everything just seems so much harder. I've seen this happen time and time again, and I've personally been through this series of yo-yo dieting myself as well. Because the truth is, in the short term, just about everything works as long as you're in a calorie deficit with your diet. The long term, however, is where most people fail. In fact, there exists 8 to 12 week studies showing successful weight loss with pretty much every dieting approach out there. But when you look at long-term research, only about 10 to 20% of those individuals are able to keep that weight off in the long run, which is due to the fact that most people have been taught to use approaches that set themselves up for failure in the long run by negatively affecting their bodies both physiologically and psychologically with diets that leave them in a position where it's now much harder to strip off that excess fat. And to help explain the science behind how exactly this happens, here is Dr. Eric Trexler, pro bodybuilder and PhD researcher who has done a ton of work within this field.
So yo-yo dieting, it's something a lot of people experience, repeated cycles of dieting and regaining the weight that they lost. And one of the reasons it's problematic is because, with metabolic adaptation, we start losing fat. Our body adapts to that in certain ways. None of them are terrible, but they're things that we have to plan for, and so people will lose weight and they'll start running into a little bit of friction. They might notice that their energy expenditure is lower than it used to be. They're much hungrier than they used to be. There might be some hormonal changes depending on how much weight they've lost and how lean they've gotten. And for a lot of people, they run into enough friction that they decide they no longer wish to be dieting, so they'll lose some fat and say, I don't think I really want to continue with the fat loss, or they're simply unable to continue because it's become so unpleasant. And so, sometimes people will say this, I just can't keep up with this because I don't like how low my calories are. I don't like how hungry I am. I don't like how lethargic I'm feeling. And they might go off the diet, start overeating. And because they have so much hunger and, relatively low energy expenditure, the weight gain they experience can be fairly rapid. And so what's unfortunate about that is we have a lot of hunger toward the end of a diet. Some of that is a result of just having low caloric intake. Some of that's related to having less fat storage than we used to. But some of it is related to the loss of lean mass, which occurs during a diet. And what happens is if we regain all of our fat from a diet during this yo-yo dieting process, in many cases, we regain the fat more quickly than we could possibly regain the lean mass. And if we find ourselves in a position where we're back at our normal starting body weight, but we have less lean mass than when we started, we haven't restored all the lean mass that we lost, we'll find that some of that hunger from the diet persists, even though we've regained all the weight. And so that's where you can start to see, not only do people go back to the starting line after a relatively unsuccessful dieting attempt, but they can actually shift that starting line back a little bit.
Now, as Eric alluded to, this is exactly how restrictive diets leave you in a worse place every time you attempt to diet down, and literally just sets you up for failure in the long run by making it harder and harder for you to strip off that fat for good. So if this sounds like you and you're at a point where you've been chronically undereating, doing a ton of cardio, binging every now and then, and basically just in a cycle of yo-yo dieting, then you need to realize that weight loss should not be your priority right now. Your body isn't ready physiologically nor psychologically. Remember, we're talking about lifetime results here, not just some 12-week weight loss program. So we need to first get your body recovered back to a point where we're now ready to start cutting calories and stimulating fat loss the right way. And to do so, we want to first use something called the recovery phase. So with this phase, we have three major goals. One, we want to restore the lean muscle mass that you lost, as this will not only help slightly boost your metabolic rate, but muscle loss also seems to be directly correlated to your hunger levels, where the more muscle and overall lean mass you lose, the hungrier your body tends to be. We don't actually know physiologically why this is, but nonetheless, it's why we need to prioritize lean mass restoration before beginning to diet again. 2, to restore any hormonal imbalances related to hunger, fatigue, and just overall feeling like crap as a result of your previous diet. And 3, to just get you in a better mindset with regards to your relationship to food and your weight. We need to get you in a state where you're actually excited and truly ready to start a diet again before we do so. Now, to accomplish this, all you're going to do is simply bump up your calories to whatever your maintenance calories currently are, or even slightly above this, while also cutting back on your cardio if you're currently doing quite a bit of it. And to get a rough estimate of what maintenance may be for you, you can simply multiply your body weight in pounds by 14 to 15. Stick to that, then monitor your calorie intake and body weight over the next few weeks and adjust accordingly to the point where you're now maintaining your current weight with a certain calorie intake. But do be comfortable with your body weight slowly creeping up just a little bit throughout the process. Although this may sound counterintuitive, what a lot of you may notice by doing this is that these extra calories are just what your body needed, and you're now so much more energized, you're moving more, you're performing better in the gym, you're regaining your lost muscle and strength, you're not completely wrecked after your workouts, you're sleeping better, and you just feel better throughout the day. Now, as for how long you should stay in this recovery for, here's what Eric recommends. Once we do get into the recovery phase, how long typically would it take someone to at least physiologically recover back to a point where they're now ready to go back on the diet?
It's a good question. Now, assuming that you're no longer in a caloric deficit, assuming that you're at a reasonably comfortable body fat level that is sustainable, we're usually looking at it at least a month or two, usually more in the 2 to 4 month range to reach full recovery.
So, take your time with this phase, guys, and think about the long term. I really just can't stress this enough. When you're ready though, phase 2 is where we can give dieting another shot. But this time we need to do it right, which means that we need to set up our fat loss phase in a way that minimizes muscle loss and minimizes the metabolic adaptation that we typically experience throughout our diet. And as outlined in Eric's research papers, there are a few ways that we can do this. First, you need to avoid using a very aggressive calorie deficit, as research has shown that just a moderate deficit that enables you to lose weight at a rate of about 0.7% of your body weight per week is ideal to maximize fat loss while minimizing metabolic adaptations and muscle loss. For most people, this equates to roughly only a 15 to 25% calorie deficit, but just keep an eye on how your body weight progresses throughout the weeks and adjust accordingly. Next, we want to use an approach that's called intermittent dieting. I have covered this in a past video, but essentially, after every 6 to 8 weeks or so of dieting, you want to break this up with what's called a diet break, where you eat at maintenance calories for about a week or two. Now, although
I'm so excited! Look what just got here!
I'm always so excited to get my friend.
Though research regarding this is still very preliminary, it does suggest that diet breaks may help reverse some of the metabolic adaptations you experience from your weeks of dieting, potentially minimize the metabolic adaptations going forward, and it just prepares you for your next phase of dieting. Not to mention that it can also help with better adherence over the course of your diet. In fact, I would even recommend that after you lose a considerable amount of weight, take a break from dieting altogether for a little while and just focus on maintaining that current weight. Remember, it's about lifelong results here, so don't be afraid to take it slow. And lastly, you need to ensure that you're eating a high protein diet along with high volume, low calorie filling foods. The sufficient protein will not only help you burn more calories by just metabolizing it, but will also help keep you full and maintain or even build muscle mass as you diet down. And opting for satiating foods that provide the most bang for your buck in terms of calories will just again help you stay full and satisfied even when your calories do drop quite low in your diet, which in turn will minimize the risk of you overeating and binging when things do get tough. And I do have a past video on what foods I'd recommend for this reason, and I'll link that in the description box down below. So basically, you apply these 3 steps until you successfully lean down to the level of body fat that you're satisfied with. Then, once you do so, it's time to transition to phase 3. Now this phase is where most people screw everything up. Because just like as I explained earlier, as you diet down, your body adapts and gradually slows down its metabolism to try to fight back. We've minimized this in our dieting plan, but nonetheless, there will still be some metabolic adaptation present, which just means that now your maintenance calories will be lower than they were in the beginning. Not to mention that by the end of your diet, you're also usually in a state where you're hungry and fatigued. So after phase 2, if you simply go back to what you were eating at in the beginning of your diet, while also cutting down your activity and maybe even having a cheat day or 2 to celebrate the end of your diet, you're going to be overeating considerably and can gain a ton of weight in a short amount of time, especially since your body at this point is primed to favor fat gain, which can then lead us to the same problem that we were at in the very beginning of all this. So instead, what we want to do here is simply find a way that you can maintain your weight loss in a sustainable way without feeling like you're starving yourself or doing an excessive amount of cardio. And one option to do so is with something called a reverse diet, where immediately after your diet, you bump up your calories back up to your new lower maintenance levels to just get out of the dieting phase. Then from here, you basically experiment with very slowly adding calories back into your diet while keeping a close eye on your weight. Although the effect this has does seem to vary individually, oftentimes what happens is even though you're adding more and more calories back into your diet, your body counteracts this by essentially getting out of that dieting mindset and tends to start burning more calories through subconscious increases in daily activity or need to slowly bump up your metabolism. So by the end of this process, you'll still have successfully kept off most or all of the fat that you lost, you'll feel more energized and stronger in the gym, and you'll be eating considerably more calories than you were after you finish your diet, which should eventually be similar or close to the maintenance calories that you started out your diet at. However, keep in mind that again, this does vary individually as people respond to increases in calorie intake differently. For instance, in one overfeeding study, researchers brought 16 normal weight subjects into a lab for 8 weeks and served them in excess of 1,000 calories each day. Based on the math, everyone should have gained 16 pounds in 8 weeks. However, in reality, the subjects gained anywhere from under a pound to up to about 9 pounds. And the discrepancy and variation here between subjects was mainly due to a difference in need, meaning that some subjects responded much better to the excess calories by in turn burning more calories subconsciously through fidgeting, postural adjustments, and other subtle movements throughout the day.
Really quickly, I want to address that study because I have read that one. They also did not, like, they asked people to not increase their physical activity through like exercise and stuff. So like those people who were, you know, like again, they calculated it out. It should have been, you know, 16 pounds, I think is how much they should have gained. And when they didn't, it wasn't because those people were like, oh, I mean, all this extra stuff, and then they started like exercising or anything. They were told to not engage in any extra physical activity, and yet they still didn't gain as much weight, which means that they did engage in extra physical activity. It may not have necessarily been like 3 sets of 20 squats or anything like that, but it was just like fidgeting, moving around, maybe walking, and so, you know, little tiny adjustments there. And they weren't even probably aware of it. I mean, if we're assuming all of these people are, you know, honest and follow directions.
Whereas others just didn't respond as well. Here's what Eric recommends. So with regards to the reverse dieting phase, after a successful dieting phase to, let's say, somewhere around 10% body fat, so not, you know, physique competitor completely shredded, but, you know, 6-pack visible. Overall, what do you typically see as the general response to reverse dieting? And then also on that note, how much do you think that most individuals in this position can increase their calories by while still more or less maintaining their current level of leanness?
Good question. So typical response is really hard to give a singular kind of description of, because what you find in the literature is the magnitude of metabolic adaptation during weight loss is quite variable, and the magnitude of responses to overfeeding is quite variable. So with reverse dieting, what we're trying to do is just kind of slowly increase calories to see if we can increase our energy expenditure kind of on a similar timeline. So if we're kind of fueling a little bit of recovery and getting our energy expenditure back toward a normal level, the idea is to nudge that process along with slow increases in caloric intake so that we're not going to have a huge caloric surplus at any given time that's going to cause any rapid weight gain. For most people, reverse dieting, we might be able to increase caloric intake by 100 calories, a couple hundred calories. For some people, you know, higher than a couple hundred, maybe a few hundred or so. You do see these rare instances where people push it really, really high, but they are pretty infrequent.
So basically what the reverse diet process does is, let's say your old maintenance was here, your new maintenance after your diet is here, and your dieting calories are here. right? So immediately after you finish your diet, you bump up to your new maintenance, which is lower than your old. And then with reverse dieting, you might
Lumen tells you what you're currently burning for energy, carbs, or body fat. Get recommendations to
be able to increase this just a little bit, so you're working with more calories and are able to sustain your current level of leanness in a much more sustainable way, correct?
Correct. And you might not be able to push it all the way up to where your old maintenance was, because you still have less body mass than you used to, but you can start reducing that adaptive gap in energy expenditure, start nudging that back up toward normal. And you can build a little bit of extra space into the diet that makes it a little bit more sustainable in terms of caloric intake.
Simply meaning that the response to this reverse dieting phase will vary for everyone. So experiment with it and keep in mind that the main goal is to get you to a point where you feel great, your body weight hasn't increased by much or at all, and you're maintaining your new physique with a sustainable and satisfying amount of calories as well as a manageable amount of cardio. And then from here, it really is up to you where you want to go next. You could either maintain your new physique with relative ease with your new higher calorie intake, or you could simply choose to now focus more so on muscle growth if you're seeking to add some more size to your frame. In which case, you'd simply start eating at a calorie surplus to slowly gain muscle over time, and then transition back to phase 2 of this plan whenever you're ready to start leaning down some more. Now, although this whole process may seem very complex and you may be feeling as if there's no hope for you, just realize that that simply is not true. I'm not gonna lie, it will take time, but by following these 4 phases, remaining patient, and combining this with a solid training and nutrition plan, then you can and you will be able to strip off that fat for good. On that note though, guys, for those who do need that extra bit of help, my step-by-step programs have been designed to guide you through each of these phases in detail. It comes fully...
Okay. So, kind of a fun, sort of different approach, right? The idea of reverse dieting. It's like you've dieted and like maybe you've had some substantial weight loss. And now what you do is you're slowly adding calories back, trying to push those NEAT levels. Remember, we know when we get more calories, our body gets a little fidgety. We start to move more, we start to burn more calories. So we actually try to increase our calories just a little bit here and there, little tiny adjustments over time. I'm trying to kind of just push that metabolism up. We're just trying to get it, back to those neutral levels. Any questions or comments on any of that, guys? We lost Thomas again. His internet must be struggling. You guys feeling good? All 3 of you guys?
Yeah, pretty clear.
Okay, cool. Let's do the next one. All right, let's look at some myths. So looking at chapter 9 here, this chapter is a little bit more abstract because it's kind of a fun take on things. But after completing this lesson, we want to understand how some of these weight management myths are developed. I don't know where they came from, I guess. Be familiar with how they are, they're fallacies, right? They're definitely like not true. There's not a lot of actual science behind them. And then we need to be able to educate our clients and kind of, bust these myths up, break them up. So the world of nutrition, especially, but also the world of exercise, full of controversy, full of disagreements. There's a lot of different like scientific literature out there, media reports, a lot of stuff is very much like driven by marketing, again, like the US will tell you that, drinking milk is healthy for you. And it's like, well, it is a good source of calcium. It's a good source of protein. It also comes with a lot of sugars and a lot of like saturated fat as well, depending on the type of milk that you're drinking. So is it healthy? Well, there's arguments, depends on, if you need calcium, sure, maybe it's healthy for you. But maybe not, like if you're getting plenty of other, things, you don't necessarily need that. So we're going to look at some of these and kind of bust them up. So the first one, if we're talking about like high protein or like low carb diets, right? Saying that a high protein diet and a low carb diet is best is a kind of irresponsible way to have that conversation. Not saying it can't be fine. If you're a keto person, it can be healthy. It can be. I'm not saying that it definitely is. But diets like ketogenic diets, Atkins, the Zone diet, South Beach diet, they are often very much restricting like your carbohydrate intake. I mean, Zone and South Beach are definitely not restricting carbs as much as like Atkins was, and definitely not as much as like just the keto diet. But it is still like a very, low carbohydrate thing. And so it's like, all right, you're cutting out your carbs and stuff. That's what's helping you lose weight, because carbs are what make you gain weight. That's not an accurate description of how this works, right? So what will happen is, yeah, if you are on a super low carb diet, you will enter ketosis, right? Ketosis is the state in which your body's liver is converting fats into fatty acids, which can then be turned into acetyl-CoA, which is then used for ATP production. So you're kind of skipping the whole glycolysis process, and you are running your body off of, ketone bodies instead. So, like, is that, and it's like, okay, well, I'm burning fat for fuel. It's like, yeah, but that paints a picture as if it means that you're burning like your body fat for fuel, which is not exactly how that works, right? You are burning dietary fat for fuel. And again, it can be fine. I'm not like anti-keto or anything. It can be fine, but it is one of those things where it's like, is it necessary? Well, the word necessary to me means that it's like something you have to do. That means that it's a best practice, is the only way to do things. It's like, I think that's an irresponsible way to frame it. So there's no consensus in the scientific literature, long-term studies, that low carbohydrate diets produce greater weight loss. Again, weight loss comes from a caloric deficit, where your body is tapping into your fat stores to make up for the energy gap. It doesn't come from, carbohydrates, your body, lacking, unless you are cutting out carbs and then you're lowering your calories. And then, yeah, guess what? Sure enough, you are absolutely going to lose a substantial amount of weight. And it will be really effective in the beginning, because you're going to lose all your glycogen. So you'll drop a ton of weight for the first couple of days. High protein diets, and there are some bad things that come along with this. We go on like a high protein diet that oftentimes means in consuming more animal products, more meats. Most animal products are very high in saturated fat, just like, don't eat human, but if we were to eat you, we are mostly saturated fat. We'd have a lot of marbling. Weird example. But like that high saturated fat has been associated with like an increased risk of like different types of heart disease and things like that. So, high protein diets, yeah, there's that can be risky in its own way. Also, it often comes with like, often it also comes with lots of like sodium intake. A lot of times like, salted meats and things like that. So there's several different mechanisms that may be responsible for the weight loss seen during like a low carb diet. Like, why, if people have gone on low carb and they've had so much success, why does it work? Like, why do we see so much about how keto is great? Because like, I've had students who were on keto in class before, and like, we've had fun conversations about it, and they're like, what's the deal? Like, cause this is what works for me, right? Well, okay, so let's play this out, right? There are a lot of different mechanisms that could explain this. One of the biggest ones is a depletion in glycogen. Let's see here. How many pounds of glycogen in the body? Your body will store about 100 to 120 grams. So yeah, that's about 5 to 6% of the weight in your liver. Yeah, about 1.5 kilograms, I guess is what they're saying here. So 1.5 kilograms times 2.2, it's about 3.5 pounds. You know, depending on the size of your body. So yeah, you go on a keto diet, you lose 3.5 pounds in 2 days. You know, like that's gonna be like, wow, this is the best diet ever. And then it just immediately, you know, can't really continue any further. Also, the ketogenic nature of the diet does sometimes mean that you're going to suppress your appetite. You know, if I look at it like a keto diet, let's look at a keto diet meal plan. Let's take a look here. Actually, you know, yeah, this will work. Oh, that's got grains in it. No. That's not true keto. There we go. That's a little bit better. These are mostly snacks, but like it's a lot of bacon, it's a lot of eggs, cheese, nuts. That's a okay. And then, you know, I don't know what that is. That looks like meat of some type. It's got to be like it's stir fry sauce. That's got to be like chicken or something. And then like freaking guacamole over here. Yeah, it's a lot of fat, you know, and fat leaves you feeling full for a very long period of time. So that can reduce your appetite, and then you passively just consume less calories because you're not hungry. You're like, oh, well, I can eat 50 calories today, you know. That's a lot. But like, so that may result in that may explain why these diets work. Which, by the way, isn't necessarily a bad thing when I'm saying that, right? Like that. Hey, like if we suppress your appetite effectively, maybe the keto diet is what works for you, you know? All right, just make sure if you're doing it, watch out for what we said, right? Watch out for the high sodium intake, watch out for the high saturated fat intake, be cautious about like, you know, getting things that may not be healthy associated with that. But hey, this is kind of a good thing. And then high protein often results in also greater hormone related satiation. So by, you know, you're suppressing appetite in 2 different ways here now, right? Protein makes more leptin, which makes you feel fuller for longer. So that's really likely. And then the other one, and this is just the easy fun one, the self-selection of limited food choices often results in a decreased caloric expenditure. Sometimes like when you go on a diet, you know, I've said this for years. If I were to create a diet called like the alphabet diet, right? I would write a book called the alphabet diet. And I was like, it's a 26-day program where you can only eat foods that begin with the letter A on the first day, the foods that begin with the letter B on the second day. Eventually, you're going to get to like Q. Good freaking luck. You know, you're going to get to X. Yeah, there's not a lot of foods that begin with the letter X. You know, it's going to be a calorie restricted diet, right? You're going to end up in a place where yeah, you didn't eat anything, you know, like because it was just like it was just difficult to find things that kind of fit within the confines of this diet. So, you know, that can obviously result in decreased caloric intake, which will result in weight loss. So I like to think that I'm being fair there. I'm not anti-keto or anything. I am pro getting enough vegetables and fruits and vitamins and minerals in your diet. I am pro making sure that we're being cautious about our saturated fat intake. I'm pro, you know, being cautious about our sodium intake. But if you do all those things that I just said that I am pro, and that still looks like a keto diet for you, great, I'm on board. You know, that's fine. So carbohydrates, weight gain, and insulin. Yeah, a lot of times it's what's one of our myths. It has been very popularized that carbohydrates are bad for you. Carbs are bad. Carbs are evil. Insulin oftentimes gets. This is totally just me writing here. There's no way this is in the PowerPoint, right? Yeah. Okay. Oftentimes insulin gets a bad rap as being a bad hormone, due to the fact that its job is to pull sugar out of your blood and convert that sugar to fat. 100%. So that sounds like, oh, freaking thing. Well, stop making insulin, you know? But again, like, let's look at like insulin's role. It's a hormone that, you know, is in charge of like pulling sugar out of your blood, which is a really important thing because when there's too much sugar in your blood, your cells literally suffocate. There's just too much stuff. Like again, the way I always like to describe it is like if you filled my house with sand and I had to walk around and like live my life, everything's more difficult, like opening the fridge, like everything's just pain in the butt to freaking walk around. Yeah, that's not a great way to function, to live a life. Your body, if it's full of sugar, right? You just, it's not going to be easy to move around. So insulin, right? Its job is to transport glucose from the bloodstream into your muscles and into your fat cells. Yes, it will convert it into fat. But that doesn't mean that insulin is a bad thing, we actually, sometimes this can also drive it into your glycogen stores and, restore your energy for your next workout, which is one of the reasons why sometimes eating a really high carbohydrate meal after a workout is a great way to spike your insulin in a positive way, spike it, and then, have plenty of energy for tomorrow. And we just talked about like how a lot of people, they slow down, right? They slow down throughout the week. And it's like, let's make sure we're not doing that. Keep those glycogen stores full. Then glucagon, by the way, we mentioned glucagon here. This is also secreted by the pancreas. Its job is to do the exact opposite. So when your blood sugars are low, glucagon's job is to say, hey, glycogen, we need you. And so we'll release that glycogen that it was stored earlier. And now your blood sugar levels will go back to normal. So maybe your liver, get some glucagon and it hits the liver, and then your liver's like, I'm on it. And it releases some glucose into your bloodstream. And then that gets down to your calf muscles because you're in the middle of a run or something, right? Yeah, question.
So if your blood sugar is really low, let's say you're more prone to hypoglycemia, why do you get all shaky? Why is the nervous system
it's a little weird, right? So yeah, why do you get like the shakes when you're low blood sugar? Because you get the shakes sometimes when you are also really high blood sugar, right? So it's like, what the hell's happening there? Well, that is actually a response to how do I describe this? It is kind of similar to how your body, like your sugar levels are elevating back up, even though like you are consistently like with low sugar, you are driving sugar into the parts of your body that you are going to use to fight or flight, right? So, it's like, okay, we're going to get your sugar levels back to normal. This may not get us fully back to normal, where now you can, do normal brain function and like use every muscle in the body, maybe even your digestive system, a little bit of glucose from that, you running that. Instead of doing those things, now it's like, all right, your muscles, we are driving, because clearly the only reason you aren't getting enough sugar is because as a hunter-gatherer, you didn't have enough energy to go, gathering stuff. So we need to give you plenty of energy, and we need to give you plenty of like, stamina to do stuff. And then so like that glucagon raising your blood sugar levels, it drives it up, but it drives into your muscles, which makes you very amped up and gives you a lot of energy. And you sometimes feel it as like the shakes. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I was like, how do I? So yeah, that's kind of an interesting one there. To function, we need to make sure we have like a good glucose concentration, and this is one of the reasons why we are going to pay attention to the glycemic index of foods. Glycemic index, a tool that's used to measure how much certain foods affect your blood sugar, right? So some foods are going to hit your blood sugar way harder than other foods. And the glycemic index is a really great tool to kind of monitor that. And for the record, like I will say, like the glycemic index has kind of, there's some question, there's some critics here. Some critics question how practical it is because people don't really consume foods in isolation. It's not like you're eating one food by itself. A lot of times you're pairing things up, you're having grapes and cheese at the same time. Grapes have a, super high on the glycemic index, cheese pretty low. But like that's okay. I mean, like, that doesn't mean that like this isn't a tool at our disposal, you know? See if I can find like an infographic. There we go. So, you know, if you're looking at these foods, like this is, you know, a 70 to, this is going to hit your blood sugar a lot harder, right? French fries, this is a potato without any skin on it. That skin would have slowed things down, but no, this is like super easy to process, right? You know, was that a Pop-Tart or something? Donuts, obviously, like white bread, that's another one. But then like, look, we have like whole grain bread down here. Still pretty high, right? I mean, there's not a huge difference between white and whole wheat, you know, bread, but like, you know, a little bit difference there. Here's like barley-based bread that's like even a little bit more intense, a little bit lower. But then we see down here, like, here's an interesting one: dark chocolate versus, you know, chocolate donuts. Super high in the glycemic index. Dark chocolate just a little bit more complicated. I will say this is another one: dark chocolate. Dark chocolate has been like listed as like a health food in the last couple of years because like it has like resveratrol in it and some other antioxidants and stuff. We're giving a little bit more credit than it deserves. It's still a lot of sugar in there. Cacao, pretty good. You know, that's like pure fiber, but cacao is not exactly that tasty without the milk and without the sugar in it. But you can see like certain fruits and things like that, and then like vegetables. How I like to break it down, this is sort of like 5 different categories here. Without telling my clients, you know, to look at a full glycemic index. The way I like to kind of break it down is you got basically 4 big categories. You've got vegetables, which have the lowest impact on your blood sugar. Fruits, second lowest impact on your blood sugar. Whole grains, starting to get into the high categories here, like moderate to high impact on your blood sugar. And then you have like processed foods, which are going to have a massive impact on your blood sugar levels. So we are trying to keep these in normal, healthy ranges, right? If you bring in a ton of sugar, like high glycemic foods, your body gets a big burst of energy, and then your body goes, holy crap, and it creates a ton of insulin. And then all that insulin drives all that sugar out of your blood. If it can't store it as glycogen, it just got stored as body fat. So there is some accuracy to talking about carbohydrates and weight gain here. But again, any energy surplus will result in weight gain. But the real problem here is that you created so much insulin, it drove all the sugar out of your blood, converted too much to glycogen, or, you know, more likely converted too much of it to body fat. And now your body's like, I'm hungry, let's go get something else. Hey, that thing that was really high on the glycemic index, I love that. Because again, your body is in hunter-gatherer mode. It wants quick sources of energy. And it's like your body wants donuts. That's why foods taste good. You know, foods taste good because they are things that are like biologically necessary for us, you know? Fun fact, like, yeah, like, you know, cats, if you were to like try to give like a cat like a candy bar, they're not going to be interested in it at all, because cats can't taste sugar. They have no, like, you know, if you were to like let your cat like lick like a Snickers bar, don't do that. But if you did, you know, it'd be like chocolate. I don't know. It would taste like the fats that are in it and stuff, but it literally doesn't have glucose. You know, cats literally don't have glucose taste receptors. So literally cannot taste it, because cats are not meant to eat any carbohydrates. They rely entirely, I mean, they actually still run their body on carbohydrates, ironically, but they do it after they convert proteins. The cats are doing gluconeogenesis like constantly. So they eat like massive amounts of protein, then that protein gets converted into carbs and then kind of runs the way it is normally. This is why cats have kidney problems so often, because, you know, that's your kidneys process that excess in urea. Let's stop talking about cats. Let's get back to people. So one of our other myths, the more calories you cut, the more weight you lose. Yeah, just eat nothing. Have you heard of the water diet? Right? Here's the thing, like most nutrition experts really do not recommend an energy intake, below, like this is saying like 1,000 to 1,200 calories. I don't take my clients below 15, any of my clients, unless my client is like 5'1", you know, like in their, you know, 60s. Okay, sure. Yeah, maybe somebody like that. Okay, maybe we'll lower the calories a little bit lower, but honestly, guys, like I don't take my calories that low, right? I want my clients to eat as much as they can, as much as they can get away with, right? Because very low calorie diets, or VLCDs, are diets that are extremely low, and they go even below freaking 1,200 calories, which is crazy. There was a popular diet for a while there. God, do you guys remember this? This was like 15 years ago. So it was like all over the place. Where what is it? HCG, hormone diet. There's a hormone, HCG. Yeah, that it's like pregnant women make it, but it's like a hormone that your body makes, and it was a 600 calorie diet. You're supposed to eat about 600 calories a day, and the idea is that your body would, you know, survive off of fat storage, and HCG would make it easier to break down that fat. Crazy risky. Yeah, no way are you getting enough vitamin C on 600 calories a day. That's insane. Really, one of the most common side effects of this, when it comes to malnutrition, by the way, is gallstone formations. I told my mom this, like guaranteed that is what caused her gallstone. She probably, you know, she tends to be kind of has tended to be kind of a yo-yo dieter. So yeah, that's a big one, right? Like people will do this. The reason why it causes gallstones, by the way, in case anyone out there is like, why the heck does that happen? With that lack of vitamins, then minerals are not being processed or used the way they're supposed to. So when you consume a mineral, which is, you know, calcium is a rock, right? Well, it's a metal. It starts, you know, it runs through your bloodstream, doesn't get used, and then ends up getting like into your liver. And then when your liver's creating bile, some of that bile actually has like little and I mean super microscopic, like chemical level microscopic bits of calcium or sodium or something. And then, you know, those minerals start combining together because they're attracted to one another, because it's, you know, like is attracted to like, and you know, you get a bigger and bigger and bigger stone, like slowly over time. So that's how that happens. Not awesome, right? We want to use our minerals. We need vitamin D to help with our calcium, right? If you're on a super low calorie diet, you don't get enough vitamin D, that calcium is just floating in your bloodstream, you know, and it's like, you know, your bones are like, I want that, but we don't have any vitamin D to get it. So not awesome. I'm particularly angry with that one. You know, that's how my mom got her gallstone. So I'm like, I guarantee that's how she got it. So I'm particularly irritated with very low calorie diets. Another myth, certain foods make you burn more weight, lose more fat, you know. Back in the day, the old grapefruit diet. You know, this is the idea that there are a lot of like negative calorie foods, right? So negative calorie foods are foods that are technically like burn more calories. You've probably heard that like celery is mostly fiber, and so it has such a low amount of calories in it, it actually takes more energy to process that celery than the calories that are in celery. Mustard is kind of like that. Mustard's very difficult to break down. Okay, yeah, sure. This when we were gonna list that as like 0 calories. The idea that it is a way to like burn extra fat, like just squirt mustard or something, I don't know, not very responsible, you know. So certain foods do have a higher thermic effect, absolutely, but not significantly enough to like, you know, have a role in the realm of like weight loss, you know. A lot of times the reason people on like a grapefruit diet actually lost weight is because that's the only thing they were consuming. So it was a very low calorie diet in disguise. You know, it was hiding as a low calorie diet. That's a big one. Low fat or fat free is healthy. That's a myth, right? We kind of talked about that the other day, actually, but this ends up being kind of just similar to the idea of like low carb, just a little bit different, right? Instead of like low carb, it's low fat. But the idea here again is that, this is not, low carb is not better for weight loss. Energy deficits are better for weight loss. Low fat is not better for weight loss, and energy deficit is what causes weight loss. So it's a lot of times food companies, they got to find a way to make something taste good. If it's low fat, they'll just boost the sugar levels. I love this. There used to be this picture that I found on the internet, banana fat free sticker. There used to be these stickers. Yeah, peel me, I'm fat free. And it's like, I mean, okay. Yeah, I mean, like bananas are objectively healthy for you. Like, great source of potassium, lots of really good stuff in there. But this is them trying to market, this is them trying to sell more bananas. That is what marketing is, right? Yeah, of course it's a fat-free food. Like it's a fruit, like fruits don't contain a lot of fat generally. So a lot of times they're very high in sugar, very high in protein. Bananas are very high in sugar, and they're actually not that low on the glycemic index. They're kind of high. So I'm not saying they're unhealthy, but a lot of times they're just going to find a way to like add excessive levels of sugar or maybe add excessive levels of protein instead of having fat in there. Skipping meals is a good way to lose weight. What about like the whole intermittent fasting thing, right? Again, I'm also not anti-intermittent fasting. There's some really interesting research on intermittent fasting where they've seen people create more human growth hormone, more like sex hormones and stuff. I think that there are actually some positive benefits to intermittent fasting. But again, when people fast, they're giving themselves like a window. What if you were on a diet and you're like, all right, I have this eating window and I got to stay within that window, and then you're just swamped that day. You have a really busy day, and you're like, I got to get through like 6 meals in the next 8 hours, and it's like, you can only get through 3 of them. Well, guess what? There's all those extra calories you didn't consume. So a lot of times I think that explains some of the weight loss. Often when someone skips meals, they are just not taking in as many calories as they sort of normally would. But also one of the negative benefits or negative effects is when you skip meals, oftentimes you'll be hungrier later. And that can actually mean that you'll consume like too many calories, right? You'll go on an epic like cheat day or something. That's not great. Eating at night. Oh, I didn't put this one in the notes. Eating at night causes you to gain weight. Yeah, no, there's no evidence to suggest that is true. There's the closest we get, like, so there's no magical specific time that your body is better at storing fat. That's what we always hear, right? It's like if you eat at night, your body will convert anything that you consumed into fat because you're going into rest mode. You're not going to burn off any of the energy. That actually, I mean, you hear that and it's like, yeah, that makes sense. But it's just not how our bodies work. It's just not how metabolically, how we metabolize things. I will say this though. I will say one thing. They have associated, if you are a night eater, it is more likely that you are going to be obese. They have seen a correlation between eating at night and being overweight. It is not because eating at night makes you gain weight. It is because the habits associated with one are also the habits that are associated with another. And then there is maybe some evidence to suggest that when you do consume like high carbohydrate foods, which generally might have like sugars in them, those sugars keep your brain awake and then your brain doesn't rest and it kind of runs all night. Then you don't get enough good night's sleep. You don't get a good night's sleep. Your body produces a bunch of stress, cortisol in response, and cortisol will make you gain weight. So not awesome, right? Not great. And the other thing is like if you skipped all your food and ate at night, all of your calories, yeah, chances are you're gonna overeat. Oh, Simon, you okay? Dog ate it going up the stairs. being vegetarian is an excellent way to lose weight. Vegetarian is, you know, a weight loss diet. Hey, I'm not anti-vegetarian, but like to say that it's a weight loss diet, because which is a lot of what they'll be like, I'm gonna go vegetarian while they try to like lose weight. It's like, again, you could do that with a calorie deficit, or you know, you could stay vegetarian and gain weight, you know, like plant-based diets, they tend to be very low in fat, and they are very high in fiber, and they are very high in phytochemicals. Low fat means low calories a lot of times. Not that that means that it's just always healthy, but like there's just not as much energy in that food. So you can eat massive volumes of food on a vegetarian diet. It's very high in fiber. It's got a lot of phytochemicals in it and colors and stuff, which are great for you. So all these things are really, really good. And that's what is explaining like why, yeah, sometimes when people switch to veganism or vegetarianism, they do lose a substantial amount of weight. It has nothing to do with the actual vegetarianism as much as it has to do with the foods that are associated with vegetarianism are foods that leave you feeling full, give you lots of vitamins and minerals, and keep you from eating massive amounts of calories oftentimes. In the times where I've done vegetarianism, I find it actually very difficult to get enough calories in. And when I don't want to lose weight, I will. You can't lose weight or be healthy if you eat red meat. I definitely didn't put that one in the notes. Red meat's fine in small amounts. It's super high in cholesterol. It's super high in saturated fat. So you should definitely be cautious, but it's got a lot of like zinc and iron and, you know, really positive stuff in it as well. So incorporating that into your diet can actually be plenty. It can be healthy. It can be fine. Everything in moderation. More protein means more muscle. This is a big one, right? And I love how they got this written here. Your body needs enough protein to grow muscle, right? In the same way that it needs enough fat to produce hormones or enough carbohydrates to give you energy. So is there any evidence to suggest that your body will produce more hormones when you consume lots of fat? Like if you have way too much fat in your diet, will your body create way too much hormones? No, that sounds silly, right? Is your body going to make way more glycogen if you bring in more carbohydrates? No, it's just going to convert it into fat. So do you think your body will produce way more muscle because you have way more protein? No, your body's just going to convert any of the extra into carbohydrates, and then it's going to be used for energy. So we need to be in a positive energy nitrogen balance, but it doesn't need to be a, you know, the more protein. It's not like eating more protein gives more muscle. So we need to make sure that we are balancing all of our macronutrients. Now, resistance training does mean that you are going to damage, like when you are engaging in like weight training, you are damaging your proteins. So, you know, your muscles are made of a lot of protein. So you're killing those things. You're breaking them up like crazy. That does mean that you will need more protein. But again, like eventually there's a tipping point, you know? So there's no consensus that being way over in your nitrogen balance gives you more muscles. There's no evidence to suggest that's how that works. You have to exercise at a low intensity in order to burn fat, because that's the fat burning zone, right? So okay, so here's a little chart representing what really. I need this to be a little bigger. Is there another one? There we go. Okay. Oh my God, that's small too. Whatever. All right. So this top line represents the dark purple line represents how many of your calories are coming from fat, and the bottom line, the light purple line, is representing how many calories you're burning from carbohydrates. So when your heart rate is at a minimum, you are mostly burning fat as a fuel source, and when your heart rate is at a maximum, you are mostly burning carbohydrates as a fuel source. So these things work and opposite of each other. They cross each other, right? The fat burning zone is right here. It's in the middle. Technically, I guess, technically, we could say that it's actually like right here, like just before that line, instead of like perfectly in the middle where it's like 51% fat, 49% carbs, but like for the purposes of like what we're saying, this is the fat burning zone. So what they call it the fat burning zone because people used to think it's like, well, this is still where you're burning a maximum percentage of fat, right? But here's the thing. You are burning a lot of calories when you are in the gym. So if you create, let's say you tap in, you're doing sprints, which means you're definitely using carbs. Well, if you're burning those carbs, you're burning a massive amount of calories. And yeah, those calories mostly come from like your glycogen stores. But what's going to happen is your body is going to refill those glycogen stores the next time you get carbohydrates in your diet. And you're going to have an increased caloric expenditure throughout the rest of the day, which is great, that epoch that we talk about. So that's a really positive thing. But like, yeah, the whole low intensity thing, it doesn't make a lot of sense because you're going to, unless you can spend 6 hours in the gym every day, exercising at a low intensity is, and it can be safe, which we like low intensity for that. But like, man, like your body, you're not giving your body a reason to adapt. But you're also like, you're just burning less calories. It all balances in the end, it all balances out. Here's another one. Females who exercise will get bulky. That's something a lot of people are like afraid of. Women just don't have as much testosterone, which is very anabolic and associated with hypertrophy. Women and men, women get strong similarly to the way men do. But in terms of like the size of their muscles, that's very much associated with like testosterone in particular. Men create about 20 to 30 times as much testosterone as women do. So the idea here that like lifting weights will cause like a woman to get bulky is just not it just doesn't really work that way, right? Also, women do have a predominance for type 1 muscle fibers, which is why women, you look at like the differences between like how much weight, like when you look at like the world of like weightlifting, Olympic weightlifting, you'll see like men's pounds, how much they can lift is here, and then the women's, it'll be like a kind of a big gap, right? But if you look at like the difference between like their marathon times, that gap is so much smaller because women are definitely built for endurance. You get into ultra marathons, and a lot of times women are better than men are. And so they have a better, more predominance for type 1 muscle fibers, and they're better at relying on fat as a fuel source. However, strength gains are very similar among both sexes in terms of like percentages. Yeah, no, I'm not saying like weights are the same, but again, like women can get, stronger at a similar rate. Sugar makes you fat? No, not really. I mean, don't get me wrong, like sugar should be avoided. Make no mistake about it. But like if you're avoiding all sugar, like you're like, oh, I don't eat fruits because they have sugar, even honey, the sugars found in milks, those are all fairly natural and they're better for you than like sucrose is. Like white table sugar, yeah, like refined sugar doesn't really, it's a nutritionally bankrupt food that really does not have any redeeming qualities. Avoid added sugars. This is why when they retooled the nutrition facts panel, when they retooled that, one of the things that they started including was not so much just like sugars, it shows you how many added sugars there are. Right? So here's like the old version. And then here's the new version where it's like, yeah, this has 12 grams of sugar, 10 grams of it is added sugar. So they dumped some extra sugar in there to make it taste better. Probably a low fat food. I didn't look at the fat content, but maybe. So sugar does not necessarily make you fat, but junk food kind of does. Junk food, which is nutritionally bankrupt. we do want to retool the way we have this conversation. We are not going to tell our clients to just avoid sugar. You know, rather than saying something, don't eat sugar, it's going to make you fat. Instead, we saying something like, hey, reducing your junk food, soda, cookies, chips, candy, things like that, and increasing your physical activity is a great way to improve your health, because you are going to be eating what you should eat rather than what you kind of shouldn't. This is why I like the idea of like inclusive dieting instead of exclusive dieting. I like to tell my clients what to eat rather than telling them what not to eat. Try to keep your sugar intake to less than 10% of your daily calories. If you can do that, you're going to be in a good place. Starvation mode prevents weight loss. So yeah, when your body goes into starvation mode because maybe you're eating too few calories, this is also actually a myth. You know, there are some studies that have shown a reduction in metabolism, but that difference is very small, and most scientists agree that it's also very reversible. But here's the thing, starvation diets do lead to malnutrition, low energy expenditure, which means you may reduce how many calories you end up burning every day, mood swings, you know, really negative stuff. So we do not like starvation mode, but to say that it's like the reason that's preventing weight loss isn't really a very accurate description. So a lot of myths out there. Our job is to break them, demystify the realm of weight loss. You know, it doesn't, that's the thing, like it's not magic, but it doesn't need to be magic, you know. Like sometimes people are so worried, they're just like losing weight seems like this mystical freaking thing, because it's kind of complicated, but like it can all be very much explained. When someone's like, I don't know why I didn't lose weight, and it's like, well, your body adjusted in some way. It found a way to burn less calories. Is your metabolism? Probably not, you know, but it's maybe your lifestyle changes without realizing it, you know. And yeah, those are all of our kind of fun myths. That's kind of a lot, you know, it's a lot of individual ones. You don't have to necessarily have all those memorized, but hopefully like the big take home message, what I want everybody to kind of go away with today is like, we don't need it to be magic. We don't need it to be like a magic way for our clients to reach their goals. The answer to meeting your goals are small, sustainable adjustments that you can keep up for a long time, and overall healthy behaviors, not temporary healthy behaviors, you know. Any questions today, guys? Lorianne, Thomas, and Bay?
No, thank you.
All right.
No, pretty clear.
Cool. All right, well, let's kill the recording.